In this episode of the Rockets Chop Shop Pod, my boys James and Coop join me to make a case for why the Rockets should draft Amen Thompson. Now, you guys know that I'm a little skeptical about this kid. But I think they make a good case. So y'all check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know, would you draft him at 3? Would you draft him at 4? Would you draft him over Scoot? Tap in, enjoy. All right, welcome to another episode of the Rockets Chop Shop Pod. I got two of the Chop Shop regulars with me, my man James Piercy and my man Ali Coop. What's going on with y'all boys?
Jalen, man, looking forward to a little bit of Amen Thompson discussion. I know Coop is too.
Yeah, this is my guy. We did our breakdown on upside swings on him a few months ago, and I haven't been able to hop on anywhere and talk about him in a while. I just spend all day texting about him for the last 3 days. So very excited to hop on, talk some Amen Thompson.
All right, let's get into it then. Now, if you've been living under a rock, you know and you don't know, the Rockets got the 4th pick in the lottery the other night. So there's a very, very, very high chance that we end up drafting this kid. I've, on the Chop Shop comments, after I had made a video, I think we did a live stream where I basically went through a bout of depression for about 2 hours live on air. And then I did another video because I felt like, damn, I was really down. Then let me just balance it out. So I did a more positive video, which I did open the door. And you guys know I'm okay with drafting Amen Thompson. It seems like a lot of our listeners are. But I have some reservations. So we're going to get into all that. Just firstly, one of the main things that, we see when we look at these prospects coming out of college and the different leagues and the different kind of divisions that they play in is we always try to compare them to different people. With Amen Thompson, his comparisons, I've heard a lot. And James, and, one of the reasons we want to do this pod is because of an article that you wrote from the Dream Shake titled, "Can the Rockets Get an Amen?" Amen. But one of his comparisons, and one of the ones that I've heard that people have referred to. I mean, I've heard things like, obviously, Ben Simmons comes to mind. Rondo, I've heard 6'7" Rondo. I think Michael Carter Williams was the one you referenced in the thing, which low-key disrespectful. But I don't get a lot of confidence hearing those types of names. Now, when I look at him as a prospect, obviously, athletically, physically, I mean, the wingspan was, 7 foot, over 7'2" or something like that. None of those guys, except maybe Ben, has those measurements. I know that he is a different tier of athletic ability than probably a lot of those guys we just named. But it's still, the reservations is still there. But when I'm looking at the NBA landscape, who can I really say Amen Thompson is comparable to? Which player can we really look at and say this is a upscaled version of what we can expect from if the Rockets were to draft him?
I'm going to give a bit of a non-answer to that one. I don't think there necessarily is one at the moment. I think pass first playmaking has kind of gone out of fashion a little bit, but just as we've talked about in regards to Jalen as a volume scorer, LP as a pass first big, like archetypes come in and out of fashion. So the fact that guys aren't getting it done with dimes right now doesn't really move me insofar as I think Amen could just kind of be the guy to bring that back a little bit, But so for me, I look less for a direct comparison, and as I get into in the article, I'm looking more at is it possible for a lead playmaker to function without a credible jump shot, regardless of how they're stylistically going about things? Is it necessarily a death knell if you're not a good shooter? And I don't think it is. I think Paulo Banchero just wrapped up a season that we all agree he looked fantastic, shooting 29% from deep, right? Giannis can't shoot at all, and they make it work with 4-out spacing, right? So, if the only reservation is he can't shoot, my response is that he has the potential to do enough other things at an elite level that I think he can work around that, especially with the right system.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job in the article of highlighting a lot of the stars in today's game are just able to do everything else other than shoot and still able to succeed. I mean, a lot of people will negatively compare him to Russell Westbrook and Giannis and Ben Simmons specifically. And it's well, they can't get it done in the playoffs, yada, yada, yada. I mean, Russell Westbrook at 6'3" was an MVP, right? Without playing very much defense. I think if Amen Thompson is, 4 inches taller, and I think personally that he has all defensive potential. I think like really early in his career, him and his twin are both gonna make all defensive teams, or be at that level, and do that, and like just get into the paint, and the ability, like just how easy it is and is going to be for him to just get paint touches, make the right read, which I think is Amen's biggest strength, is that he makes the right read pretty consistently. He just played on a team with zero spacing. I think that brings value, right? Like a lot of value, and that's a star quality. That just not being able to shoot isn't going to stop a guy who can do everything else and bring star value in other ways. And like Ben Simmons, we talked about, was called the next LeBron for multiple years and was one of the most dominant defenders in the league for 3 years, a great offensive player, just played next to Joel Embiid, and was stuck in the dunker spot and was kind of a puss. There's not really another way to put it. And I don't think Amen has those same qualities. I mean, people talk about him and Ausar in the gym all the time, constantly grinding, constantly improving, looking at tape as 20-year-olds. If if I were a player and I was, my age, hell no, I'm not watching film. I'm busy working on my jumper, right?
You sound like one of our Rockets players right now.
I'm Josh Christopher. Yeah. Josh Christopher working on the step back mid range instead of looking at the film. But I think they're just both twins, but Amen especially, very mature, he's able to make the right play. And I think people kind of miss that because of his creativity and his flash and athleticism. But he is fundamentally solid and plays like a lot of these lead ball handlers that can't really shoot and makes good decisions.
All right, so I'm going to be the wet blanket here on this just for the sake of balance. So you guys already know my argument points. We've talked about this. My issue with, and everything you said is true, on film, I used to think, earlier on when I was watching him, that he was a passer that used his athleticism to generate open looks for players, which to me, those type of players, they're pretty good. You have, those are your John Morant's, the Russell Westbrook type of passers, but Amen actually has some defensive manipulation where he's able to anticipate where he's going to be and try to make passes out of that. That does impress me. My only issue with that is that the defenses he's actually facing. The combination of issues I have is not one in a vacuum. I don't think the shooting is that big of a deal in a vacuum by itself because he's willing to shoot, and I don't think it's a thing where he has this stigma where he can't shoot. My issue is he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He can't shoot. Plus, all we know from him is the competition level from OTE. And that really, really, really scares me in the short term because, as we know, even players that play at higher levels of basketball, when they come into the NBA, they struggle. And especially even good shooters will struggle out the gates. And for somebody that's a poor shooter in a league that you really can't really assess the competition level, I think that if we draft him, this kid is going to be a 3-year project to even become I guess not even to say his peak, but to even get to the point where him being on the court isn't a detriment to the team on the offensive end of the ball.
So just real quick, I think the closest guy that he's comparable to as just coming out the gate, competition level, all that kind of stuff is John Morant. Offensively, I think just the ability, the burst especially, I think is their most similar trait. I think Ja's a more explosive leaper and Amen is a world's better lateral mover. So they're not perfect comps at all, but as drivers and finish and layup finishers, particularly, I think they're similar enough. And Ja played, he played at Murray State, which is not even Power 7, at comp. I think it's closer to OTE, not stylistically, but just, I think OTE's talent is kind of underrated. Their big problem is stylistically, it really leaned into the style of ball that the Twins thrive in. And that's defensive playmaking, defense into offense, wide open bricked three turns into, semi-transition. And I think some of that stuff will translate for the Twins. And I think that it's good for them to like do that stuff, but it doesn't help the half court concerns and all that. But I think just the pure burst from a standstill for Amen is like top tier. And I think that's going to translate. And I think he's going to get into the paint basically at will in NBA spacing. I think the playmaking and decision making will take a little bit to come along to like be really crisp and clean, like the way we see it and the way we expect to see it. But I think the athleticism is like 100th percentile and is going to translate off the bat, even if the other stuff doesn't.
Let me just add this too. Like, it's definitely a valid concern, right? Like, really, it's to me, it's obviously a valid concern. Like, OTE plays. I mean, it looks like pretty much exhibition ball from what I gathered. Like it looks like it's a half step from the Harlem Globetrotters out there, honestly, right? But it's a concern. It's a risk, and the kid could be a bust. Like I would never deny that the kid could absolutely be like a historic bust, right? But he's definitely, assuming he's on the board, he's definitely going to be the only guy left on the board that has any chance ever of doing like, the types of things that we want a franchise player to do, right? Like I don't think, like, I like Cam Whitmore. I think he'll probably make a couple of all-star teams, I very much doubt. I don't think Cam Whitmore's a better prospect than Jalen Green, and I mean, who else are we talking about? There's Ausar, but then all the same risks apply, right? Like drafting his brother instead of him wouldn't really make sense. And then I don't know, we're looking at like Ant Black, who might be Kyle Anderson. We're not really sure, I like Hassan Wallace, but like those defensive guards, they usually take years. They're probably impactful right off the bat, but then it takes them a long time to actually develop like into an all-star. Like you look at Drew Holiday. He was a good defender from day one, but he was 6-7 years into his career before he had the offensive polish to like be a primary option. I think Hassan's looking at a similar trajectory. I think there's a snowball's chance that he wins an MVP someday, and so that's why I would just take him, just because you just had to take that risk, because that's where we're at. We don't have a guy that's going to win an MVP award, in my opinion.
I mean, that's a great point. Go ahead, Coop.
Oh yeah, just piggybacking real quick on what you said about Ausar. I think the thing that people kind of point to with Ausar is the jumper, and that's like, oh my God, he's the better brother. To me, the worst athlete by like a tiny amount. So he's like, 98th percentile instead of 100. He's still really good, but the decision making is the big gap. And the shooting isn't like actually good to the point where he's still going to draw closeouts. So it's like both of them stink. And if you're not going to draw a closeout, it doesn't really matter what the percentage is, right? Because your impact on the defense is the same as a spot up guy. And as someone like Ausar is like an off-ball scoring wing, right? I think he projects to do that. Even if you're Mike and you believe that he's a point guard at the next level, like, mainly what he's shown you is as a cutter, off-ball wing, secondary scorer, right? It's just basically Jalen Green, right? That's, the fit there is so clunky that just shooting, like 5 percentage points higher at like 29, 30% instead of like 24, 25% is not enough to make up for the awful fit, the subpar decision making, and the less athleticism. And Amen, I think is just a perfect fit in a lot of different ways that make him even more of an obvious choice here.
Now, James, in the article you would put in the section about Thompson is a freak, you put that functionally Giannis is more an instructive point of comparison than Simmons for Amen Thompson. And, basically because you're contrasting, because even though Giannis is not a great shooter, he still like is willing to shoot and is not scared of the moment to try to shoot. Now, when I think about that, and kind of to Coop's point where he's talking about a fit, obviously we need a point guard. We're watching the playoffs right now. Maybe a few years down the line, it may align, and that's why I'm open to actually drafting Amen Thompson, because I feel like my concerns are really short-term concerns. But if he never does get to that point where even if he is a Ben Simmons, even when Ben was in his peak, he was an issue in the playoffs a lot of the years. And we see these guys that are going to be, liabilities. Like you even seen it with Aaron Gordon right now, how they're guarding him. It does limit to me the ceiling of a player. As far as looking at them, like how good can you be if you're going to be a primary ball handler? Teams are sagging off from you in the paint, but his athletic ability is the difference maker for me from all the guys that we just named. Like the wingspan, the height, all of that is there. But you're talking about probably one of the best athletes that's going to be in the NBA as soon as he touches down in there. Like what does that open up for him on the court? That just from day one, the fact that he has, like Coop said, the explosiveness, good lateral movement. I mean, the defensive end to me is where really he kind of erases some of my fears, because at worst you could just put him out there as like a Draymond. I know people are going to hear like Draymond, but yes, like a Draymond, especially if you're going to build the type of offense that we run right now. That Coach Udoka is going to be running, where we're going to be running a lot of dribble handoffs and high screen and rolls and getting guys in a short roll. And you got to and one thing that, and this is going to tie back to something I'm going to talk about in another video, is the article that Fagan and Eco did interviewing Coach Udoka about the way he likes to run offense. He likes to do a lot of guard on guard screens, using two guards. We see Marcus Smart get into it. I can see a world where Jalen Green and Amen Thompson running some guard on guard screens. That rim pressure from both ends. Jalen, if he develops as a better shooter from the outside, that could be very intriguing. Like, what do you see that? Where do you see with Amen's fit and day one impact on the league based on his profile?
Yeah, day one impact. I think it's fairly likely that he will struggle, just strictly by virtue of having to adjust from being able to dominate everybody. Like, the competition level thing. It just comes back to the competition level thing. Like he's gonna realize, like, okay, when Jakob Pertl or Brook Lopez or Mo Bamba is in the paint, like I can't really just soar in there and triple reverse lay out my way to 2 points. Like it's suddenly somebody is very much in my way. And in terms of the immediate fit with the Rockets, like I think that there might be some difficult questions regarding Thompson and Sengun as well. To be honest with you, but I think that's just part of a rebuild, and one or the other might end up being collateral damage. But I think it's a long-term swing more than anything else, right? You're doing it for the long-term potential.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it a little bit this morning, but I think some of the most interesting offensive upside for Amen, especially if like you want to play him next to another ball handler, is as a screener, as a short roller, and as basically, Bruce Brown, but also the best athlete in the NBA, right? And you can still utilize his quick decision making, his ability to get downhill. The defender has to guard him more because I think he's a solid screener. Like he's shown a little bit playing with Ausar. I think the two of them have, they screen, they run actions together, stuff like that. He's a good cutter off the ball. I don't think he's like an elite off-ball player or anything. But if you just keep a guy like that constantly moving, constantly involved in actions where his defender at least has to like pay attention to him, that's, a pretty easy way to offset the shooting concerns and the like, oh, how does this translate day one concerns? I think the defense will translate. I think there's a surprising amount of guys who can't really dribble in the NBA, and Amen is going to make their life hell. And he jumps lazy, he jumps passing lanes really well. He can make weak side rim rotations, and I think a guy like that under Ime is just going to be like let loose. Imagining him and Tari together on the defensive end, just oh my god, absolute
that'd
chaos.
Be crazy.
Madness.
Do you think there's a world where Coach Udoka may actually prefer a player like him over some of the more offensive gear? Because I feel like defensively, if we were going to talk about defensive impact, and that's one again kind of goes back to the OTE thing. I just wish they played like in a more structured league, because I just feel that he might have been like the clear number two. If for not for that, because defensively, I mean, the measurements, the athleticism, he has all the tools to be like a defensive player of the year type of player, and where you could see him guarding like 1 through 4. And then on the offensive side, to me, like where I see him scaling up is going to be his ability to punish smaller defenders, that means he has to get a post game. That means he has to really, he doesn't have to be a great 3-point shooter, but be somebody that could punish inside the paint. And there's so much upside for that type of player, even on a playoff team, especially if they're surrounded by shooting. That's why I'm, like I said, I'm open to drafting him. It's just in comparison to some of the other options, like the Scoot Hendersons or the Brandon Miller. So I mean that is something you do bring up in the article, James, about the Scoot comparisons. If somehow the Rockets had both of them available, let's say we moved up to 3, Charlotte bumps their head and drafts Brandon Miller somehow at 2, and you're at 3, and you have the option of Amen or Scoot. Which one are you guys going with? James, you go. Then Coop, I'm curious to hear what you say, bro. Who you
I
pick?
had to take Henderson because I do think the floor is a lot higher. There are shooting indicators like Scoot Henderson, man. I think you could honestly make the case that he has a higher floor than Wembanyama because Wembanyama has the injury concerns. Like realistically, man, there's never ever been a dude with that frame who hasn't had serious injury problems in NBA history ever, right?
Thanks.
So there's a low floor with Wembanyama. The floor is like game 3 of his career. He's done forever. I pray that doesn't happen, and I'm sure it won't. But like,
Or Chet in summer league, as soon as you step on the court, and
man, I mean,
or what was that in the exhibit? LeBron breathes on him and he's out for the year. So
Yeah. It was the slippery floors at the Jamal.
yeah, man. So there are real concerns, right? Whereas Scoot Henderson to me is like that's a ready-made NBA star, man. I can't see any world where he's not an NBA star. So I would take Scoot Henderson. I'm wondering what I think Cooper would take him.
come on, Coop.
Well, let me just start real quick.
He's gonna
I'll
butter
build my
us
way
up.
up.
Go
I'll
ahead,
build my
bro.
way up. But I think my big worry with Scoot and the way he's talked about is that over like the last 2 seasons, I think he's missed like 50% of his games, right? And I actually like it helps me buy the shooting even more because to me, like one of the last things that comes back after an injury is like your shooting efficiency. And he was like a really good mid-range shooter and good for the G League, like with their weird free throw rules. He was a good free throw shooter over there. It's just like the raw 3-point percentage isn't there, despite like taking a pretty tough variety of attempts. So I do still worry about the injury concerns with Scoot. Maybe less than Wembanyama because Wemby, I think, I from all that I know, he has like his whole family is like this. They all take care of their bodies very religiously. It's like his whole thing. He has the whole workout for his pinky toe and whatever. So, there's always the world where it's like freak injury and, that sucks. But I think that applies for Scoot just as well. The track record for small guards that are super athletic and getting injured is extensive. But for the Rockets at 2, I would lean Amen. I have him second on my board. Just because, so that the main reason, I think him and Scoot are neck and neck as far as prospects. I would not be mad either way. In fact, I don't even, when we got 4 and I realized that Charlotte was going to be dumb enough to take Brandon Miller at 2, I win no matter what. We're getting Scoot or Amen. And it doesn't matter that like we slipped to 4 and, because I get a good player on my team. So I'm happy, but
that's a good point. That's a good point. But let me ask you this, Coop. Do you think that there's a world where they do actually, like some of the teams, the Blazers and Charlotte, one of them passes up on those 2 guards to give us the ability? Because I'm kind of worried that, even though I've talked all that stuff about men, I kind of feel like based on what we've discussed, the defense, I'm looking at it from a Rockets perspective. But if I'm like the Blazers, I'd draft Amen Thompson, put him next to Shaedon Sharp and Dame Lillard. And I mean, that mitigates pretty much all the stuff we talked about. Talk about screening with those 2. So, like, is there a world where like we do have to worry that a team could take him higher, like could take him at 2 maybe, compared to just drafting Scoot?
So I don't think Amen will go 2. I think Brandon Miller is basically locked in there. I think from like other teams and people that I know that like talk to people within teams, it seems like Brandon Miller is kind of locked in there. or at least like assumed to be. Charlotte still hasn't like officially made a decision or whatever, but he fits everything that they love. You know, consistent college, best player in college basketball with real production that you can point to, can shoot, he's safe, right? And teams love the safe pick, especially teams like Charlotte. And I could see the Blazers taking him, but I also think that there's a world where the Blazers even prefer Ausar, right? I think Mike Schmitz, right before he joined as their VP, their GM, whatever, their assistant GM, he did the way too early 2023 mock, and he had Ausar above Amen, 5 and 6. And I think that the shooting difference there is enough for some teams to prefer Ausar. People think he's a better defender. I don't think I agree. I think he's sneaky kind of bad on defense, but I can see a world where Amen goes 3 because of the reasons we talked about, because athleticism at the end of the day is what runs the league. Most of the best stars in the league are the most athletic in one way or another. Even guys like Jokic and Booker, who aren't this guy's not a crazy run and jump athlete. They're elite athletes in other ways, right, to make up for that. And I think Amen is a top 5 athlete on planet Earth. Full stop. He's incredible. And that can be really tempting. It's why I have him too, because the upside I think is slightly higher than Scoot's. And I think the defense is just if Scoot is 100% defense, I think, or offense, I think Amen's 70% offense. But I think if Amen is 100% of defense, Scoot is at 50. I think just there's levels to the differences that they have there, and the versatility that Amen brings you on the defensive end is unmatched in this class.
That's fine.
So it's more rare, and I think that gives him the slight edge in my book.
Can I step back in there for a second? Because I hate to do it, but I disagree with a couple of things there.
Go ahead, break it down.
I think it's honestly, man, I hate to say it. It breaks my own heart. I think it's very likely the Hornets just go ahead and take Scoot Henderson, man. And
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, as much as it disappoints me to say this, it kills me, man. But part of me looks at this and I go, okay, so this kid, Amen Thompson, he's probably top 5 athlete on planet Earth. I think that's literally fair. God tier basketball IQ from the film. This kid is super, super special, man. Brandon Miller, kind of just a wing that can shoot, and he looks like he's got some positive defensive characteristics and some negative ones. But in my heart of hearts, I look at it and I go, we have the 4th overall pick, and there are 3 prospects in this draft that have MVP potential. Why are we getting one of them? I'm very scared that we're going to end up with Brandon Miller or Cam Whitmore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'd be devastated. I'm not gonna lie. Go ahead.
Yeah. I would be devastated as well. But I think there's a few things to point to for why teams do very much actually love Brandon Miller, and a lot of that is because he's tall and can shoot. I think shooting is, by a value actual NBA evaluators, is probably the most overrated skill in the league. There are a lot of guys who aren't NBA players but have NBA contracts because all they can do is shoot. You see guys get overdrafted every year, like Corey Kispert, Ochai Agbaji, Aaron Nesmith, whose only NBA talent is shooting.
Garrison Matthews.
But I think there's
even
Garrison Matthews started.
He's not even good at his only talent when he started. So it's way overrated.
I think that, and teams can sell themselves on his creation, right? Because there's the flashes of, oh my God, this guy drove and threw a skip pass, right? Because he does but the problem is for me is that Alabama was the perfect context for him to succeed in. I think Nate Oates is a top 10 coach on planet Earth for basketball, and he is in the most exploitable league, the most exploitable high-level league in the world. And he is destroying teams by just exploiting the same weaknesses he has since he got to Alabama. Basically, if you stretch the floor out enough and you have guys who can just get into the paint and make a far side skip pass, then that is free, easy offense every single day in college basketball. And so every single person that goes to Alabama can drive and make the skip pass, and teams lose track of the sight that he's like not a great finisher, even against really subpar talent. You know, he doesn't make any other kind of pass consistently, but teams see the skip pass. They see the one cross, like the few crossovers he'll pull a game, and just get so wrapped up in flashes and, oh, he's going to bulk up. What does he look like when he's 30 pounds heavier? You know, it's because they see shooting as a skill that you can build upon, and not like he has the athletic foundation to build upon and add skills. It's, oh, the shooting is the skill and we can build up the rest of his game from there. And I think it's a flawed approach, but it's the approach that a lot of teams take with this kind of thing.
That kind of leads into the next segment, which is like the Rockets swinging on the upside in the draft. And, you know, there's still people that would say like Brandon Miller does have a skill set that the Rockets can use. Like you said, shooting, height, shooting. He, you know, we do have a positional need at the 3. But speaking of Amen Thompson, like, you know, when I'm looking at him fitting on the Rockets, if you're going to bring him in and assuming he does start, and maybe there's a world he doesn't start and he's behind Kevin Porter Jr. coming off the bench, which it might happen. You never know. Like you might.
Year one, I think it should happen. That honestly, year one, I think it probably should happen.
It could, like, real talk, Coop. I'm telling you, like the dude, he's gonna struggle. He's gonna struggle, man. But assume, let's say he does start. Okay, we'll bench KPJ for him. Where does that? To me, I like the fit on there with our like current starting. Let's even put Tari at the 3. I mean, that's a lot of non-shooting on the court, and that's where I'm saying like if it is somebody that we do draft, it's a draft looking towards when we are actually a contender, and we're gonna have. To me, this is why I see the vision with Amen Thompson is this is a kid you're gonna bring him off the bench. You're gonna help, like you said, the athletic ability is a great like piece of marble that you can chisel into this player that you want him to be over the years. And when you are in the playoff series, this dude is going to be guarding multiple positions, running the court, playing point guard, playing the wing. He can move to 3. He can be in any single lineup you want him to be in. That's why I want him. I just don't see the day one impact for the Rockets. And I'm just like thinking, what are the Rockets looking at? Like, do they actually look at him as a player that comes in? So what do y'all think about that? Like, do you think he is the swing the Rockets could take? Because I could see a world they could justify bringing a Brandon Miller, already assuming they have a Sengun, they have they have Sengun, they have Jabari, they have Jalen Green, and I think they're really really high on KPJ. So, you know, I could see that maybe being a slight deterrent because if it's not a Scoot Henderson, a player they're drafting.
Let me. My vision would be this, right? We need a backup 5 this year. Right? We're allegedly looking for one that does things that Alperen Sengun doesn't do. Presumably that means space the floor and protect the rim, right? Yeah. So if we draft Amen Thompson, there's a priority on space the floor, right? So you have him running a second unit with a big that spaces the floor. I love Naz Reid. That would be my preference because Naz Reid can play the 4 alongside Sengun too. So there's a lot of benefit to signing Naz Reid, in my opinion. But so what you're looking at next year is how does that Amen Reid pairing look compared to that Sengun KPJ pairing, right? And if it looks like the better basis long term is likely to be Thompson Reid, you know what I'm going to say. You trade Sengun next summer, right? Like, and that's it because you got your primary playmaker, man, and you got your one.
It wouldn't be a James Piercy pod without trading Sengun. I was waiting for it, bro. Thank you.
We got to trade Alperen. When are we
They're gonna get you in the comments, bro. Yeah, go ahead.
What's that?
They're gonna get you in the comments. You already know this, though.
I'm gonna get a strange letter in the mail from Turkey soon, man. I just know it. But so I know. Look, here's another thing I'd say that's relevant to that point. Okay, so you're allowed to feel however you feel about the current core guys that we have, right? But to me, if we just take Brandon Miller, right? If we end up with Brandon Miller, that's back-to-back drafts where we took the best available 3-and-D wing in the high lottery. Like, I feel like that is not how you tank, man. I really like Jabari Smith Jr. I think grabbing him was a really great thing that happened because he would complement whoever we eventually get to be our star primary playmaker, right? But if we don't have that guy, then we just keep taking 3-and-D wings with the third and fourth overall pick. Like that's very discouraging to me, man. And then we started the rebuild off with a volume scorer, and we stole a really good playmaking 5 at 16. But so, like, I mean, I guess then we really have to find out if an Alperen Sengun piloted offense can make a championship run, you know? Whereas if you get Amen, you've got options. One of those options could be fielding lineups that are just devastating on defense. Because, look, let me say one more thing before, and I'm getting a little free association here, but if we draft Amen Thompson and Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. both hit their ceilings, right? That two-man dynamic alone to me on paper can be like a championship basis. Like if they both hit their ceilings, that pairing is absolutely like perfect stuff to me. So I'm really high on the possibility of it. Even if I do think that it's probably best to bring them off the bench and bring them along slowly.
Yeah, I think even if we value shooting to like the degree that you're talking about, where it's like, oh, we debate Brandon Miller over Amen, I think the level of shooting, like Seth Curry is going to be a free agent, Yuta Watanabe, Cam Johnson, all guys who play this, they all bring arguably more shooting than Miller does. They have other aspects of their game. They're veterans. And I think Miller is like sneaky raw as well. That's a conversation for another day. But like there aren't other players who do what Amen does at 6'7". It's like Bruce Brown. Okay, do we want to is Bruce Brown even like comparable as a level as an athlete, as a playmaker, as a defender, because he's 6'2" instead of 6'7", and also like he's a good athlete, but he's like 80% of the athlete that Amen is. There's just levels to this kind of stuff. And for what they are, I think Amen is like very clearly to me has superstar qualities, even if you don't super believe in them translating and, the shot is like such a big hindrance. This is what superstars do. And Miller kind of does what superstars do sometimes, but it's a lot more questionable that he's actually going to do those things. So it's I don't know. I see how teams sell themselves on Miller, and I really do think Charlotte is going to do it just because of their track record and how psychotic they are. And honestly, it's a very poorly run franchise from everything I've heard. So I don't think they're going to make the right move here, and I think they'll take Miller. So I'm praying for it.
Let me jump back in, man. I've been making this point on the timeline, but I do not see why we would use the draft to supplement the 2023-24 season, which is basically what Cooper was saying. But just when we have $60 million in cap space, like we can go get guys. There are restricted free agents that will very much be in the running for. We can overpay. Like, why are we taking a guy because he can shoot with the 4th overall pick in the NBA draft when somebody has this ceiling? Like we. Harrison Barnes is a free agent. Give him $20 million over 3 years. Like whatever. I don't know. There's a lot of different options, but if we're just looking to the draft to improve the team right now, then trade back, man. Go get Grady Dick. He'll probably be a more impactful player than Amen Thompson.
That's a W.
Yeah, he'll probably be a more impactful player than Amen Thompson in year 1, right? So will Kassan Wallace. But if you want a guy that has a chance to be a franchise player, I would go ahead and draft the one that's on the board if we're so lucky. Yeah, I think that's all I got there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I think we're still searching for that engine. Jalen Green has flashed those abilities. Obviously, people have brought, Al Peak can certainly be an engine, but at the end of the day, even Jokic in the playoffs Jamal Murray really becomes the guy that is like the thing that balances out his skill set, meaning that the perimeter initiator creator is still going to be the apex in high leverage situations because of the ability to score at all levels and see the court from all levels. So yeah, that's why I think they wanted Paolo so bad. And Jabari was a no brainer, and we love that Jabari's here. Yeah, it's a position in need. So I'm open to drafting him. I just hope people understand that if you do bring him in, he's not going to be like, John Morant, where he's like already all NBA player in like year 2 or 3, because the skill set, even though similar, is a little bit different. I do love the upside, and if he is available at 4, yeah, I'm not entertaining anybody else because, like you pointed out, James, we need to get guys that can be special. And with Coach Udoka, I think the perimeter is going to be a premium. I love his interview with both Fagan and Eco. Like, he really gave a lot of insight to his beliefs about how he wants to see his offense. And one thing that resonated with me was the fact that he said he looks at offense as a balance. Like, he doesn't think that like how Coach Silas was like going nuts over pick and rolls, even though we had guys that couldn't run the pick and rolls. He said he's gonna use the strengths of their players, and I love that because that tells me that's a good coach, right? Whatever you have, you're gonna use it. So if it's Alp, they're gonna use him in the way he's supposed to be used, but that doesn't mean that we have to be like Denver, right? And I think people need to stop thinking like that, especially with a Popovich type of coach. I think the way Jokic is used is almost the same way Harden is used, even though they're different offenses, but the focus on that singular player of being everything is still the same. And I don't think that's how the Popovich tree guys really coach their team. So getting guys with versatility like Amen Thompson should not scare the fan base. Obviously, for me, I draft Scoot over him 100 out of 100 times. But if he is available at 4, I have him. I would gladly take him. But appreciate y'all boys for coming through. Let's not keep this too long. The article is called "Can the Rockets Get an Amen?" And you can follow James and Coop on Twitter. And why don't y'all let the viewers know, James, you can go first, where else they could find your work and you.
Yeah, man, I'm still pumping out the fake trades for NBAanalysis.net. If you want to.
Mostly involving Shank. But go ahead.
Well, it is like we're not doing another Sengun piece today, man. No, I try to avoid it. No.
Yeah, I know. He couldn't help it. He's like that. I'll do it again. Yeah,
I got a problem. Yeah, man, I'm at the Dream Shake still, and check out my stuff there if you're a Rockets fan. Appreciate you, Frank.
Yes, sir. Cool.
Yeah, you can find me over. It's draft season. You can find me over at Upside Swings. We're releasing like 40 pods over the next month, so be prepared for that. We also have a website that I made called UpsideSwings.com. If you want to read scouting reports on basically everybody at this point, we're up to 45 guys that'll be on the website in the next few days. With full scouting reports, links to our podcast on them that are like 3 hours on 4 guys. So if you really if you really care about this stuff and you want to, get the most knowledge, just go to UpsideSwings.com. We have writing, podcasts, articles. We even have a draft workout tracker, so you can see which players have worked out for the Rockets in the pre-draft. I know we've worked out Alex Fudge and Kendrick Davis. So, we have a few guys that could be pretty interesting that we'll snag with second-round picks or in undrafted free agency. So very, very exciting. But, appreciate y'all for having me on. Love any excuse to talk Amen and talk Rockets draft.
Yes, sir. I'm going to have all the links to where you can find these guys and their work in the description of this pod or video, wherever you're consuming it. Thank you guys for coming through, and thank you guys for listening and rocking with the Chop Shop.